Good afternoon. My name is Mark Baggett. Here's the obligatory bio slide, which I did in your typical geek fashion. I'm doing a get AD user. So how many PowerShell Active Directory? And so what's this doing? We're querying Active Directory. I want to filter on Mark Baggett, and I'm going to pipe it through FL format list, property star. By default, format list. It's only going to show you the properties that Microsoft really wants you to see. So here, I've told it to show all of the properties about Mark Baggett from the Active. So I do penetration testing and instant response consulting work. I'm a senior SANS instructor for SANS. I'm the author of SANS Python for Penetration Testers course. And I'm also, I'm not just the customer, I'm also, all right, so I graduated from their information security engineering degree, also got their GSE program in it, and as Daryl mentioned, I was chief information security officer for Morse Communications here in town before I came to work for SANS. So this is so here grep. We're going to look case insensitively for Mark Baggett through everything that's in the Metasploit framework directory, piping that through word count -L, count how many times Mark Baggett appears in the Metasploit framework. So there, I'm in the Metasploit framework 7 times. So there's my bio, and I'm here to tell you about spam because I hate spam. I walk around the vendor floor a little bit early, and there's all these guys with scanners, right? And I'm just walking around like, you can't scan any of my stuff because I know I'm just going to get a ton of emails from you. But nonetheless, I still get spam, and so as I'm looking through my spam inbox here, can you believe Oreo actually makes spam flavored Oreos? I don't know. So I'm looking through my mailbox, and I see the Stay Safe with the Amazing Military Flashlight and Sergeant Preve emailing me, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, hey, .mil, they must have sold my email addresses. So this is bad, right? It's obviously not targeted because I get the Russian women online. Enjoy your safe date with hot Russian ladies. If it was the dangerous date with the hot Russian ladies, maybe that I might have clicked on that one, but. So obviously not targeted email, but nonetheless, 2 emails from that are mail related. I'm a little suspicious that they're selling my email address. So I want to figure out, are they selling my email address? So I use this technique that you can use on Gmail. So if you've got Gmail accounts, and there might be some others you can do with this. If your actual email address, we'll just say it's mark@gmail.com, you can go in and you can add a plus sign and then whatever you want to the end of it, and Gmail just ignores the rest of that as it's receiving email. So when I register at Facebook.com, right, I can go out and I can register as Mark plus Baggett 932, whatever I want that's going to be unique to Facebook. When I go to Amazon, I can register with Baggett, some other numbers, just so each and every email address that I register is unique. And then when I get some email in, I can look and say, okay, this one was received at Mark 621, and I know, hey, thanks a lot, Facebook. I appreciate you selling my email address. So it turned out .mil was not actually selling my email address. But I was thinking, I wonder if I can use this same technique in my enterprise to help defend my network. Can I use creating these unique signatures that we have in our enterprises so that I'll know when one computer in my organization has been compromised? So here's my enterprise network, which is obviously made up out of, what's Microsoft's iPad thing called? I forgot. Surface, thanks. So it's the Surface. So obviously, all enterprises are running Windows 10 on Surfaces, but I had the icons. I grabbed them off the list. So we've got our enterprise network, and our systems administrator, happy systems administrator, goes, and he logs into his machines with his CAT card in his morning, and it creates this authentication credential. It's in memory on this system. Right? And we'll talk about what this is in a little bit more detail in just a second. So he creates this credential, logs in the morning, enters his username, password, types in his PIN, whatever. It calculates this user credential that's stored in memory on his system. And then he goes and he logs into various hosts around the network. And each time he logs into another host, his credentials are copied into the memory on that remote system. And then systems administrator goes away, and some evil attacker appears on the network. Now, the fact that this evil attacker looks suspiciously like the systems administrator is completely a coincidence. And then the hackers, they use their laptops and they use high-tech hacking tools to steal a copy of the credentials from the memory of remote systems and bring them down to their system. So now he's got a copy of the same credential that was originally created by the legitimate systems administrator in memory in his computer. And he can use that credential to access all of the resources that we have on the network. This is a technique that we commonly use as attackers. So systems administrator, he's a pretty sharp guy, right? So he comes in and he says, you know what, I'm going to create fake credentials that are unique to each and every machine, where I'm going to have a fake administrator 1 on machine number 1, I'm going to have fake administrator 2 on machine number 2, and each and every one of these is going to be unique to the machine that they're on. So now, when the evil hacker appears, and he uses his high-tech hacking tool to steal a copy of the credential and load it into memory in his computer, it's now unique to the machine that he stole it from. Now, he goes to use it. When he uses it against my Active Directory domain controller, when he uses it against any of the targets that are in my machine, I'll know that this was stolen from this machine, so I know my initial compromise point, and I can figure out exactly where he came from. So what is that credential that's actually in memory? When you log into your computer in the morning, you hit Control-Alt-Delete, and you get the password prompt, or you scan your biometrics, or you use a CAC card of some type, it creates this credential for you that's stored in the memory of the LSAS process, and the local security authority subsystem. And that credential is made up of a couple of parts. It's made up of your Windows SAT, or Security Access Token, and that has all your user groups and everything, and it's used for authentication to the local resources on the box that you're on. It also has these things that are SSPIs, or Security Support Provider Interfaces. And these are responsible for maintaining your credentials and your access to all of the protocols that you use on the network. So if I go to remote systems that you're logging into, if I go to log into something over HTTP, then there's going to be a security provider in here that has the credentials that allows you to single sign on into that remote system over HTTP. If I go to access a normal Windows system over SMB, server message blocks, and normal systems like that, it's going to have an NTLM or Kerberos-based credential that it uses to authenticate to that remote system. And all this stuff happens automatically for single sign-on on the systems. Some of these passwords were kept in clear text for a while, and Microsoft released some patches that help to improve some of that system. But these credentials are what's stored in the memory of the LSAS process. So if the attacker can steal these, and he wants to go after the different credentials that are associated with these different SSPIs. When he gets those credentials, he can then load them into his machine and access the resources that are on the network as though he were you. So you log in once, and it creates these different credentials, one for each of the different SSPIs. So if I'm going to create a fake credential, I need to have one that goes through the normal process, and I want to have a credential that looks just like a regular credential. I want it to have, inside the NTLM SSPI, I want it to have the hashes that we typically have created. And if you've done any compromising machines before, you recognize the pass-the-hash attack, right? These are the hashes. This is the representation of your password that the attackers are typically stealing and loading into the memory on their computer so that they can log in as you on the system. For Kerberos, there's the Kerberos ticket that's associated with it. When you first log in Kerberos for just a very, very brief period of time, it will have your password in there in clear text until you're actually issued a Kerberos ticket. And I'll show you that in just a second. And then for WDigest, this is where the password used to be before the patch, the pass-the-hash patch that removed those credentials from memory. So Microsoft has done a really good job in finding a good balance between keeping those credentials around in memory so that you can access resources on there and not keeping those clear text passwords around any longer than they need to. But I need to go through and I need to create all of these same credentials in memory that the systems normally create in order to fool users. So let me just show you one way that we can do this. Okay. Put down this mic, and this one's working, right? Yeah. All right. So let's do a quick demonstration. Have you guys heard of? Are you familiar with the run as command? Right? Yeah. Run as. So with run as, what you can do is you can tell it to run a command using an alternate credential. I want to provide you a set of usernames and passwords. It'll authenticate to the remote system. It'll verify your credentials are correct, and then it'll launch that program as that alternate user. You can see some of the options we have down here. You can provide it a /user, give it a domain that you want to log into, and then a credential. Tell it what command you want to run. All right, we've been hanging out for a little while. We're all friends here at this point, right? So this will be a good demo, I think. Run as, I'm going to run as /user nsa.gov/administrator, the cmd prompt.exe. Okay? And of course, it's going to prompt me for the credentials to nsa.gov. Just give me just a second. Okay. I enter my credentials. It verifies the credentials. It then launches this little command prompt as the NSA.gov administrator. Okay. I'll just move that one off to the side here until the choppers show up and the black vans. And then I'm going to do another one here. We'll come up here and we'll say Microsoft.com / what was that? It was an administrator. It was domain admin. Yeah, domain _ admin. All right, it prompts me for my credentials. All right, let me just put this in there. And there it gives me my command prompt running as the domain administrator credentials. All right, so normally in most states this is a felony, but here at Afcea we have a special exception clause that allows you to just do any types of demos hacking any organizations as long as it's for educational purposes. All right, so this is perfectly fine here. No, in fact, I don't have a network connection of any sort, so something odd is going on here. And it's actually, for those of you that are familiar with the run as command, it's actually that net only option that I provided with net only. So with net only, what that tells it, the system is don't actually verify these credentials against the domain controller. Instead, accept the credentials that I'm typing on the keyboard as correct, and then calculate all of those credentials that are associated with the different SSPIs and load those into memory in the LSS process as though those are the correct credentials. So basically just assume my password is right and load these things in memory. This is great for various situations where you don't have access to the domain controller, but you want to pre-stage your single sign-on so that you can go back and access those resources later. So what this did is it just calculated those credentials and loaded them in memory, which means that now when an attacker breaks into my box and uses their high-tech shark with laser hacking tools in order to steal those credentials, they're going to find those fake credentials. So let's do that. Let's come over here. I'm gonna cd into cd host tools Mimikatz. Right? We're just one tool that attackers will use to steal memory. Actually, Mimikatz is not going to work on my Windows 10 machine. Actually, let me demo this right over here on this box. Okay. So here, Windows 10, well, it kind of works on Windows 10. So I'm going to do a run as here, run as /net only. Let's see, user nsa.gov. /admin cmd.exe. Okay. And Microsoft.com. We'll just go Microsoft.gov. All right, so I got my two things loaded in memory. So now I come in here, I run Mimikatz. Mimikatz loads up, and I'll do a privilege ::debug, which allows it to inject into the LSAS process. And then I'm going to do secure LSA : log on passwords. And it dumps all of the credentials that it has in memory, goes through that LSAS process, finds the service providers. Now those passwords are not really in clear text in the system. There is a cryptography API that Mimikatz has to go through in order to decrypt that credential from memory. But it ultimately gets to those credentials because the APIs, I'm going to scroll past my legitimate credentials before anybody takes a picture of them, and then come up here. And here you can see in memory, there's the logon and password that I entered for administrator.gov. Right, you can see the Kerberos passwords. Here's my credentials for for NSA.gov. I'll just point out a couple of things here. So what you're seeing is you're seeing the exact same thing. You're seeing the exact thing that an attacker is going to see when they run these tools on their machine, right? If I steal these credentials, right? If I see I'm trying to hack the NSA, right? And I just see NSA.gov admin account, I'm an attacker. What am I now going to do? I'm going to use those credentials. I'm going to take those credentials. I've got a clear text version of their password here. I've got the hashes. I'm going to use these hashes. I'm going to launch an attack against their domain controllers. I've got the clear text passwords. I'm going to try those different passwords against their systems. And ultimately, those passwords aren't going to work, right? These passwords are unique to the machine that they were stolen from. So when I, as the NSA.gov administrator, recognized that the password Snowden sucks was used against my VPN concentrator, I know that I only placed that password on host A in my network. And I know that host A has been compromised. The attackers have admin access on that box, and they were able to steal the credentials out of memory on that system. So it's an identification method of I know exactly which hosts were identified in my network and where I received these things. So I posted this idea. I said, this is a kind of a cool little trick that I can have. And, it's really cool party tricks, right? If you want to convince all your friends you're hacking the NSA.gov administrator. I don't know why you'd want to do that. But, cool party trick and a way that we can defend our networks, more importantly. So I posted this on SANS Internet Storm Center as an idea of a way that we could fool attackers into thinking that fool attackers into using hashes and then figuring out which machines they compromised. And then the idea kind of took off. So there have since this article was posted, somebody released a group policy extension that you can actually load in Active Directory that will allow you to create a unique logon on each of the different systems right there through group policy. There's Bro and Security Onion configurations that'll detect the uses of these honey hash keys where you can, in your distributed environment, figure out exactly which hosts were compromised. In PowerSploit and PoshSec, there's a set honey hash PowerShell script now where you can also create use PowerShell scripts to create these hashes in memory on your different machines. One of the nice things about using their script as opposed to using the run as technique that I published is with that run as technique, I have to leave those command prompts running on my system at all times with those altered credentials for those credentials to stay in memory for the attackers to find. With these, you just run it and it just stays there. There's also the attackers have said, all right, well, this is something that we need to defend against. So they've released a Metasploit module that when you dump credentials from a remote machine, Metasploit will actually do LDAP queries against Active Directory to figure out whether or not these accounts are real accounts that are on your system, right? So I did not have an NSA.gov administrator account on my system. It's just a username or password that I just created. So they're looking to see, is this a real username in the environment? Now, you can still use the tool, and you can still create fake credentials. It's just you have to have a real account associated with it. So if I use my actual domain admin account, and I create a incorrect or fake password for the Active Directory domain admin accounts and stage those around my machine, then when somebody steals those hashes and starts to use them, they're going to lock out my account, right? Well, depending upon your lockout policies and things. But they're not going to successfully exploit my machine. So I can still use those legitimate credentials, and this Metasploit module isn't going to be able to detect that. Also, Dell SecureWorks, they released a framework called Decept. It's based on the concept. They went the whole 9 yards. They developed an agent that you can install on all of the hosts in your machine. And then the server, every 24 hours, it changes the fake logon and password that you've got distributed around your environment. And then they've also got a Kerberos-based sniffer that runs on your domain controllers that identifies exactly which host those particular credentials came from. Okay. So there's lots of different applications of this concept that are out there that you can use to figure out when boxes are compromised. And then somebody said to me, hey, this is an interesting idea. Can you do the same thing for Linux? And I thought, well, I don't know. Linux, there isn't really an LSAS process in Linux that's maintaining these. We don't have the benefit of single sign-on in the Linux environment where we can automatically log into systems, right? Unless you've done pluggable authentication modules and other things, but Kerberos and things like that. But out of the box Linux, we don't have that capability. So I was thinking about it, and initially I said, no, I don't think I can do this on the Linux system. And then I saw some posts that somebody did on YouTube. I thought, oh wait, there's a technique I could use. I can actually do this on Linux systems. So on Linux, your hashes aren't stored in memory in the LSASS process. They're stored in your shadow file. There's just a text file sitting on the hard drive. It's called the shadow file. And in there, if you look, you'll see there's hashes that are associated with your password. And this is what the attacker is going after when they break into a Linux box. They want to steal these hashes. They're going to crack those passwords on their system so that they can then use those credentials to access other resources. So how can I protect these? Well, it's a text file, right? But I can take advantage of a feature of the tools that attackers use to examine these files. So when an attacker breaks in your system and they want to grab a copy of your shadow file, which contains those hashes, they typically use a command called cat, short for concatenate, and it's used to just display the contents of a file. And there's some functionality within cat that I can abuse to actually change the way these hashes appear. So I wrote a tool called Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson is the last information. Everything else you've seen, all the vendors, just throw them all away. This is the last information security tool you'll ever need. Liam Neeson. It'll protect everything in your entire enterprise. Let me give you a demonstration of Liam Neeson. Okay. All right. So I'm an attacker. I've broken into this box, and I cat my Etsy shadow file. And there they are, down at the bottom of the screen. All these hashes, right? These are the things that I'm after as an attacker. If I grab those, I bring them back to my system. I'm going to load them into a password cracker, and I'm going to be able to gain access to your systems. So let's run Liam Neeson to protect it. So with Liam Neeson, Python, it's a Python tool because, of course, I'm the author of the Sans Python class. So if we do a Liam Neeson, you've got a couple of options with Liam Neeson. You can ask Liam Neeson to protect your shadow file with a -p. You can tell Liam Neeson to unprotect your shadow file once it's been protected. And if you're afraid of Liam Neeson playing with your shadow file, then you can provide some other file that you can ask him to protect. All right? I'm not afraid of Liam Neeson protecting my shadow file, so I'm going to do a Liam Neeson-P. It comes back and tells me my shadow file is now protected by Liam Neeson. Now, if I run it again, it comes back and tells me, look, it's already protected by Liam Neeson. One Liam Neeson is more than enough protection for anybody. You're good to go. Okay? So what did Liam Neeson do for my shadow file? So let's take a look at cat Etsy shadow. And when I look at my shadow file, it says, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you're looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money. But what I do have is a very particular set of skills. Skills that I've acquired over a long career that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you leave my system alone now, that'll be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you, I will find you, and I will kill you. Okay? So Liam Neeson corrupts your shadow file. No, it doesn't. Actually, my shadow file is still intact. People can still log into my system. I can still add users to the system. The shadow file is there, and it still works perfectly fine. So when your cat is sick, where do you take your cat? The vet. Right? So if we run cat with the -vet option, VET, and we look at the Etsy shadow file, we'll see what's actually going on here. Okay. What you'll see is at the end of the shadow file, and so there's my shadow file, it's intact, but at the end of the shadow file, I've got some stuff, right? Some hex characters here, 4A, 15C, and what these are Unix cursor movement commands, right? So after the file is displayed, Liam Neeson looks at your resolution. It moves the cursor up to the upper left-hand corner of the screen, and then it just begins painting. And it pastes the Liam Neeson soliloquy over the top of your shadow file. And so the attackers can no longer see your shadow file and no longer see it. So what do you think? Is this a great defense? Are the attackers going to... If you're an attacker, you break in, and you see this on the shadow file. What are you going to do? Are you going to leave discouraged? Yeah, probably not, right? I think if you're an attacker and you see this used, the proper response is you delete the shadow file and you replace it with the phrase, good luck, right? That is the response. So really this is not a good idea to protect your shadows file. But that's only because it's taunting the attackers. What if instead of overwriting the entire file with a Liam Neeson soliloquy, I moved up my cursor 2 spaces, and then I moved over here to the hash, and I changed the letter G to an H, or I changed the 2 to an A, and I just changed one letter in each of the hashes that are displayed. Now the attacker breaks in, they cat my shadow file, they steal a copy, they bring it back to their machines, they plug it into their password cracker. Are those passwords going to crack? Maybe. Eventually, after sitting there for a very, very long period of time, it might come up with a password. But that password is not going to be the password to my system. It's going to be the password for whatever that hash is associated with. So we can use this technique to obfuscate the hashes that are on the systems. We can also create a unique hash that's on the system. Now, the application of figuring out which hash that came from is a little bit more difficult unless we create IDS signatures. If they do it in clear text and we can capture the exfiltration of these shadow files off of the remote systems through IDSs, then we can determine that these were stolen from this remote system. But unless you actually sit there and crack those passwords yourself, I don't think the scenario of actually cracking a password is ever going to actually pan out, because it's just never going to crack with those passwords. So that's the idea with Liam Neeson, is we can obfuscate these hashes and make them more difficult for people to crack, and prevent people from stealing our passwords. Okay. Last slide I have is a shameless plug. So I've got my Twitter information, my cell phone up here, but let me plug these last two because, well, I know many of you are probably from Augusta and are going to be here on September 10th for the B-Sides Security Conference. It'll be another technical conference. It's here in Augusta, Georgia. We've got 40 speakers, 4 tracks, and it's all technical content. So it's going to be, we got hackers coming in from around the world to give some in-depth security presentations. Also, not on the slide, but is Security Onion. The creator of the Security Onion IDS framework, Doug Burks, is local here in Augusta. He works here in Augusta. He's got the Security Onion conferences on the 9th. So those two are back-to-back if you need an excuse to come back to town. Also, if you're a local, we've got the Augusta ISSA, where we give security talks and everything every quarter. And we bring in speakers from around the world again to give those talks. And then there's a plug for my SANS course. Any questions about either the honey hashes on the Windows side or the Liam Neeson script? You gotta have a question, or we gotta go 60 minutes, or it doesn't count, right? Yeah. What do you got?
I just wanted to know, does it persist across reboots? You said that it wasn't, it didn't keep it in memory unless you had it open, but then they fixed that?
So with the Windows-specific hashes, it will not persist across memory. So those credentials only exist once when you've run it. You would have to add it to your startup group to recreate those hashes on there. Now, I believe the DCEP framework, when you install the agent on the host, that does reload the credential back into memory on the remote systems when you've rebooted the machine. That's a good question. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay. What you got? So, yes. Yes. So, in fact, his point is that there's going to be legitimate credentials in memory associated with these machines. Yes, there will be. So the idea is that we're going to create something that's more enticing, right? So if you're looking through memory, and I'm an attacker, I look in through memory, and I see Mark Baggett credentials here, and I see domain admin account here, right? The hope is that the attackers are going to use the domain admin account or something that's, so we have to add some social engineering and some enticing elements to the hash as well. Yeah. So the thing that creates the local credential can be an account that is local to just this machine, right? It doesn't have to be in a domain administrator, but it could be a local workstation administrator account. And the idea is just to have a credential out there that when they use it, it's a tripwire. Right? When they use this credential against one of my hosts, then I can detect they've used that and figure out which machine that they've compromised in the process. But yeah, there are going to be legitimate credentials because we still have to have a functioning network.
You got to log into the machine to be able to.
Yep, we still have to have a functioning network, and so what we're doing is we're just creating ways that we can detect when they've compromised a machine on our network. Yeah, good point. What you got? Excellent question. Windows 10 does not prevent this from happening. This is not really a security flaw in the Windows operating system. This is just by nature of any single sign-on platform, whether it's Windows or Linux or anything. If you implement any type of single sign-on, you're going to have in memory on that system some representation of your credentials so that when you go to access another resource, it can single sign you in, that it can access that resource. It does. It does. Yep.
It does vault those in using TPM in a protected subprocess that's independent of the OS kernel.
Yep.
And it uses the virtualization. You have to have specific virtualization extensions, CPU, TPM, hardware. But it will
Absolutely.
with CreditCard. That's the specific that would obfuscate and protect those
Yep.
separately from the OS.
Yeah. But they're ultimately in memory and accessible so that you can log in. So an attack, what happens is once you're logged in, if you're going to use those credentials through an automated process, a tool like Mimikatz can also access those credentials through the automated process. So Mimikatz does have to go through the same cryptography APIs and everything else that in order to retrieve those. So when we talk about credentials being in memory, they're in memory, encrypted in memory, but the cryptography APIs and things like that are still exposed so that they can be called to retrieve it. And so at a low level, if any type of single sign-on is going to happen in a non-interactive way where it doesn't prompt you to say, hey, are you sure you want to access the system? If you access the system and it happens, then there are automated ways of making that happen, and the attackers are just using those same automated ways with tools. The trick is, don't let the attackers get into your box with administrative privileges, right? With those high level of privileges, and then they can't access those APIs either. Yeah. Yep. Excellent question. Other questions? No? You like my shark with the lasers and the? Is that good? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming out. Enjoy the rest of TechNet, and hopefully we'll see you guys at B-Sides Augusta.